The 1949 Ferrari 166M Touring Barchetta. Ferrari was not originally founded with the intention of making road cars. Scuderia Ferrari was founded in 1929 as a privateer racing team, and was later made the Alfa Romeo works team. Due to friction between Alfa and Enzo Ferrari, surprise, Ferrari would produce its first car in 1940. But this was just for racing, and it was only after rebuilding the factory following its destruction by Allied bombing in World War II that Ferrari expanded into building road cars. But these early road cars only happened to be road legal. They were still built primarily for racing, and Ferraris from the 40s were mostly built in small numbers and with almost no amenities. Early cars were built in very small numbers, with just 2 units of the first car, the 125S, being made. And the second model was nothing more than a prototype, the 159S. The first real production model was the 166, which existed in a few different forms. There was an actual touring car, Ferrari's first, and a couple of racing models. The first racing model was the 166S, but this was soon replaced by the car you see here, the 166M, an evolved version of the S. Continue reading to learn more about the Ferrari 166M Touring Barchetta. Exterior. The official name of the car was just 166M, with the Barchetta and Touring added later. Both of these terms relate to the bodywork, Barchetta being the Italian for boat, a nickname given to the design by a journalist who simply enough thought it looked boat-like. The word touring is used not because this was a grand touring car, which it wasn't, but because the bodies were built by Carrozzeria Touring, the couch builder famous for its superleggera construction technique. A word still in use today. This involved bolting aluminum alloy panels directly onto a tubular steel space frame, and it made for a very light but also very strong setup. Since the 166M was a race car, the body is free of any adornment, and 3 units were even built with only 1 door. Exterior dimensions. Interior. As you would expect, the interiors put into 166mm's are all pretty basic. Still, there are a few different levels to this. There was a lusso luxury option with fine leather and such luxurious appointments as 2 doors, but even these still weren't going to compete with actual GT cars. At the other end of the spectrum were the cars made with only 1 door. The 166M was made for long-distance racing, and these examples were made for seriously long-distance racing by removing the passenger seat and replacing it with a second fuel tank. In all, with any 166M, it's pretty obvious that you're looking at a race car. Ferrari did see the case for a real road car based on the 166 though, and at about the time the 166S was becoming the 166M, Ferrari also made 37 units of the 166 Inter, a GT car with a roof and everything. The sale of which helped to bring in some extra cash for developing race cars. Drivetrain. The 166M used a 2.0-liter version of the Colombo V12 that would see use in all of Ferrari's 12-cylinder models for several decades. This isn't the smallest version of the engine that ever existed, but it is almost hilariously tiny for a V12, and puts you in mind of pistons the size of thimbles. Still, the engine was a tweaked version of the one found in the 166S, bumped up to 140 horsepower thanks to 10-to-1 compression. And, no matter how much you want to laugh at it, that is a hell of a lot for a naturally aspirated 2.0-liter engine in 1948. The M in the car's name stands for Mille Miglia, the endurance race that was, at the time, one of the most important races in Europe and certainly the most important in Ferrari's home country of Italy. Ferrari had won the race in 1948 with a 166S, so the new upgraded version of the car that debuted later in the year was given the name M to commemorate this. The changes proved to be effective, and the 166M won the race in 1949. Drivetrain specifications. Prices. Ferrari only made 33 units of the 166M, and while this did represent a huge increase in production for the company, it's still not a very big number. Several of these were also converted into 212s or otherwise had the bodywork and/or interior changed, so prices will vary by a lot. A few years ago they were selling for around $1.5 million, but sales in the past couple of years have been generally exceeded $3 million. Prices of all classic Ferraris have been up by quite a bit since 2010-2011, and are currently at all-time highs. The 166M is included in this, although investors should keep in mind that this sort of exponential growth is risky. Competition. Alfa Romeo 8C 2900. The 8C might have actually been a pre-war car, but in the years immediately following World War II, new cars were scarce, and really excellent pre-war cars like the 8C were still winning races. The 8C took on then new Ferrari racers in the 1947 Mille Miglia and still won, and it was the car to beat when Ferrari took the 166S to the race. Alfa was also, at this point, a spiritual rival to Ferrari, since Enzo had driven for Alfa before the war, and even managed the works team. Delage D6S. When the 24 Hours of Le Mans started up again in 1949, most of the cars at the front of the pack came from either Delahaye or its subsidiary, Delage. The Delage cars were the faster though, particularly the D6S, a race car based on the D6 road car. Although the D6 had been a pre-war model, it got a reworking in 1946, and it would have been one of the only cars in Europe at the time to have any post-war parts at all. It wasn't quite enough to win the race, but it was the closest Delage ever got. Conclusion. The 166M is an important chapter in Ferrari's story. It was the car that the first Ferrari GT was based on. It won the Mille Miglia and took Ferrari's first win at Le Mans, also in 1949. It might not have been the first Ferrari, but it is probably the most important of those early 40s models. It's the car that made Ferrari its reputation, and is as historically significant as it is an excellent machine. Love it. One of only two cars to ever win the Mille Miglia and Le Mans in the same year. Among the most important Ferraris ever, a 2.0-liter V12 sounds like nothing else in the world. Leave it no interior to speak of, even in the Lusso's few unaltered examples exist not as valuable as the racing model that came after it.
If you liked this video, please share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.